Hi everyone and welcome to the second installment in my favourites of 2021 series where I'll be running through every single category, listing my favourite products. Today is the turn of concealer, so as per usual, I'm going to give my ultimate favourite. If that ultimate favourite is not affordable or cruelty free, I'll also give you options in those categories as well. So let's get started. If you're new here, hi, welcome, my name's Gemma. I upload new videos on YouTube every single week and I'm also on Instagram if you fancy checking me out over there, and I'd really appreciate it if after this video, if you found it helpful or entertaining, click on that subscribe bell, also the notification bell, and if you fancy it, the like button as well. Let's get on with it. Okay, so this video isn't only going to be about concealers, I am going to touch on colour correctors as well because I think they're really important when we're talking about concealers. I can do with all the help that I can get. I do have quite prominent dark circles underneath my eyes which are hereditary and I don't like them. I want them gone, but if I can't make them go away, I want to be able to cover them up. So that's where colour correctors come in. Colour correctors will really help to neutralise the discoloration, whether that's bluey or purpley tones underneath the eyes before you go in with concealer. My ultimate favourite colour corrector is from NARS. This is the creamy colour corrector and it's in the shade Light. Now, there's been a lot of people shouting at me over the past couple of months because it's very difficult to get the shade Light at the moment. They are having, I believe, distribution issues, as are a lot of places all over the world. So bear with them, they will eventually get the stock in and it will be worth the wait. For me, this is the best that I've tried because of its consistency and its pigmentation. So it's incredibly lightweight and creamy on the skin. It's slightly lighter weight and slightly looser consistency than the creamy concealer from NARS. I actually prefer this to the creamy concealer. I'm not quite sure what the difference in ingredients is, but this tends to self-set. I don't need to powder this and it doesn't crease. And the pigmentation is excellent. It's also hydrating underneath the eyes. There is nothing worse than a colour corrector that dries your skin out, because adding a colour corrector underneath the eyes that dries your skin out and then applying a concealer over the top will just make your concealer look cakey and dry and awful. So the colour corrector that you put underneath your concealer needs to be the right consistency. And if you have dry under eyes, you definitely need something that's going to be hydrating. This definitely is. This completely neutralizes my pigmentation effortlessly and creates a beautiful canvas for all of the other products to sit on top of. So yeah, I love it. But the NARS isn't affordable and it's also not cruelty free, so I need a favourite in both of those categories. I definitely have one. In fact, this used to be my ultimate favourite for a long time. It's from Revolution and it's the Conceal and Correct. It is amazing. Not just amazing for the cost, this is just amazing. Until this came along and knocked it off the top spot. You get 6 mils of product in the NARS, you get 4 mils worth of product in the Revolution. It's worth every single penny. Now this is called Peach, but side by side with the NARS product, this is actually a lot pinkier in tone. The NARS is much more of an orangey peach, whereas the Revolution is much more of a pinky peach. I really love both of these products. Both of them have a similar consistency, a similar pigmentation level, although one is pinkier than the other, a similar finish to the surface of the skin. Both of them are hydrating. They neutralize the pigmentation underneath my eyes and they do it without drying and also without needing to be set. So both of them amazing. Okay, so let's move on to concealers. Now, a lot of the time I don't just use one concealer underneath my eyes. I like to blend a couple of concealers together to create a winning combination. So it's not always just about one concealer fits all. Sometimes you have to mess around with it depending on what you need that day. So whether you need that concealer to lighten a shade, deepen a shade, whether you need more coverage, a little bit less coverage, whether you need it to be more hydrating. All of these things will change on a day-to-day basis, so I do like to mix things up a little bit. So these next couple are my ultimate combination. Now, before I go into those particular concealers, I always get a couple of comments in the comment section every video when people notice that I do use two concealers, saying that that's just not feasible for everyday life because it's too expensive. What you have to remember in those instances, you're not using the same amount of each concealer, you're using a lot less. So you're probably using half of the amount. So whereas a concealer might last you 3-4 months, that concealer, if you're using it alongside another one, will last you 6 to 8 months. So it's actually not any more expensive than it would be if you were to just use one concealer. So that's how I personally use it. So this is my winning combination. We've got the Lancome All Over Concealer and the Pat McGrath Sublime Perfection Concealer. But let me talk about the Lancome first, because once I'd found the Lancome when I tried it for the first time, this is the product that really upped my makeup game. This is the one that just changed my under eyes for the better, because this has a technology in here that allows the product, a bit like spandex, to stretch and to move with the under eye. So I have no fears of smiling and giggling and laughing, and know that this is going to move with my skin rather than cracking and creasing and sitting in fine lines. So I find that the best way to apply this is with your fingertips. Warm the product up and really tap it into the skin. That way you will really get the best out of this concealer. Now, this is the magic ingredient. So I can mix this with any other concealer and it still will perform the same, as long as the majority of the cocktail is this formula. So usually I'll use 3/4 Lancome All Over Concealer, and then I'll use 1/4 another concealer to mix that up. Because I do find that the Lancome doesn't have as much coverage as I would like. So I need a concealer to mix with this that's going to up the coverage level. I also need a concealer that I can mix with this that will lighten the shade of this concealer, because it's slightly too dark for me. Only slightly, but it's slightly too dark for me. So I've tried mixing this with lots of different concealers, and recently have started mixing it with the Pat McGrath. The Pat McGrath is amazing because it has great longevity. It also looks very flattering underneath the eye, as long as you don't apply too much, and then it can look a little heavy. It mixes very, very well. So I've got a slightly paler shade in the Pat McGrath to lighten the shade of the Lancome. This also has excellent coverage, so it increases the coverage a wee little bit of the Lancome and just gives me the perfect mix. Both of these together last all day on me without budging. But both of those aren't cruelty-free and affordable, so my favourites in those categories come from e.l.f. Now, depending on what sort of day I'm having, depends on whether I use the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer on its own, or whether, if I want a little bit more coverage, I mix it with the original Camo Concealer. Both of them are amazing. I don't feel like I can get away with wearing the original Camo Concealer all the time, because although it doesn't have any dehydrating properties, I do find it slightly drying underneath my eyes. Mixed with a little bit of this, however, great wear all day. So I just don't think you can get any better for an affordable price than the e.l.f. Revolution do some amazing concealers that have featured in many of my videos before, but e.l.f. have just pipped them to the post for my affordable, cruelty-free favourites. Just like the Pat McGrath and the Lancome combination, mixing the e.l.f. Hydrating and the e.l.f. Original Camo Concealers together, you will get longevity out of this. You will also get a concealer that doesn't move or crease or sit in fine lines. But again, you do have to apply the right amount not too much, a little goes a long way. Also, I do find sometimes I have to powder this in place, whereas my Pat McGrath and the Lancome, I don't tend to have to do that. Also, the reason that the Lancome and the Pat McGrath are my ultimate favourites is for that spandex quality. I get a lot less creasing, even if I apply a little bit too much of the Lancome and the Pat McGrath than I do with the e.l.f., which is why this is in second place and not my ultimate favourite. But what if you're wearing no makeup, which I tend to do quite a lot. I know that may shock quite a lot of you, but I don't wear makeup every single day. Sometimes I like to give my skin a little bit of a breather, but I like to have a little bit of coverage underneath my eyes when I've got no other products on my face. What concealer is my ultimate favourite for those sorts of days? Now, this is a little bit of a bittersweet moment for me because I've only just found this concealer. It's my ultimate favourite for those days where I'm wearing no other makeup. It melts beautifully into the skin and it does not crease on me. It covers my under eye circles without the need of a colour corrector. I just find having a little bit of discoloration poking through a concealer on the days that you aren't wearing any makeup just looks a little bit more natural, so this works for me. The bitter part of this bittersweet moment is that this has been discontinued. So I am going to replace it with something else, but I did want to mention it. This is the By Terry Stylo Expert Click Stick. If you can get this from anywhere, usually it is a fraction of the cost of its original price. So give it a go if you can find it anywhere. I will link all of my shades in the description box for you, by the way. This is unbelievable. It's a really nice, creamy formula. And yeah, it's just unbelievable. It's practically undetectable on the skin, and I wore this while I was putting the Christmas tree up the other day. I'm not quite sure why I gave you that piece of information, but I just did. So I just wanted to feel a little bit more alive whilst I was, you know, engrossing myself in the festivities. But I didn't want to make too much of an effort, and this is what I wore. It just looked absolutely beautiful. If you cannot get your hands on this, however, and I'm sad that I will probably never be able to get my hands on it again, then I absolutely adore the Kosas Creamy Concealer. Is that what it's called? Kosas Revealer Concealer. Hang on. I am getting really old. I cannot read this small writing. The Kosas Revealer Super Creamy Plus Brightening Concealer. Wow. That is a mouthful. This is beautiful. It's extremely creamy. It's extremely hydrating. This is great for those days where you're not wearing any makeup because it blends perfectly into the skin. But this is also one of those products that you can build. So if you are wearing makeup and you want a bit more coverage, you can layer this up as well. You can also team it with a colour corrector, whether it's the Revolution or whether it's the NARS, or a different one if you want to, but it's absolutely beautiful. And if you apply the teeny tiniest amount, you won't have to set this in place either. It's got a beautiful satin finish on the surface of the skin, which actually reflects the light, helping to disguise those under eye circles. So yeah, it's a great one and it's cruelty-free. So both a cruelty-free and an affordable option if you're wearing no other makeup on your face is from Flower Beauty. This is gorgeous and it's one of my favourites for a reason. This dries down and yet it doesn't contain any alcohol in this formula. This really does set by itself and then it doesn't budge. Once again, it's concealer, it's underneath the eyes. The under eye area is very, very movable, so you do have to be careful how much you apply. But it's a beautiful concealer with a lovely finish to it. In fact, both of these concealers have a very similar consistency and finish to the surface of the skin. Both of them blend beautifully into bare skin. So great for those days where you're not wearing any makeup at all, apart from, you know, little tweak underneath the eye. So that's it for my favourite concealers of 2021. I hope you found it helpful. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I'd also really like it if you would list all of your favourite concealers that you've been loving using during 2021 in the comments section, because it's always useful to know maybe I haven't tried one of those and I'd really like to give it a go in 2022. Hope to see you all in the next one. Bye everyone.